92nd Street Y online media is made possible by the generous support of listeners like you. This program, part of the Unterberg Poetry Center's 75 at 75 project, features Amy Clampitt reading from her work. It was recorded on March 7, 1994, before a live audience at New York's 92nd Street Y.
Thank you. I'm going to read mainly from A Silence Opens. I'm beginning with a poem which you have a copy of with you, I think, Syrinx. I might do a little explaining about it. Syrinx is a Greek word for a pipe. It's also the name of a nymph, and in this case it refers to the voice box of songbirds. The background of it is, I remember quite distinctly, I was in Maine and listening to a radio program with Robert J. Lertzema. Those of you who know New England know Robert J. People in New York may not. Anyway, he was having a conversation with a man from the Massachusetts Audubon Society, and they were talking about bird calls. And the man from the Massachusetts Audubon Society said, birds aren't very good at consonants. And I sort of lost track of that, and then I found myself remembering, what was that man said? There was something there I've got to remember, and it came back to me. Well, anyway, out of that came eventually this poem called Syrinx. I should mention there is a Greek phrase in it, thespesiae iake. It's from the 11th book of the Odyssey, where Odysseus gets a glimpse into the underworld, and as he does so, a great many souls fly up. That phrase describes them. It's translated in various ways, wondrous or terrible cries, something like that, but it's the voices of the dead from the underworld. Syrinx. Like the foghorn that's all lung, the wind chime that's all percussion, like the wind itself that's merely air in a terrible fret without so much as a finger to articulate what ails it. The aeolian syrinx, that reed in the throat of a bird, when it comes to the shaping of what we call consonants, is too imprecise for consensus about what it even seems to be saying. Is it okali or conqueree? Is it really jug-jug? Is it cuckoo, for that matter? Much less whether a bird's call means anything in particular or at all. Syntax comes last. There can be no doubt of it. Came last, can be thought of, is thought of by some as a higher form of expression, is in extremity first to be jettisoned. As the diva on stage, all soaring pectoral breathwork, takes off pure vowel breaking free of the dry, the merely fricative husk of the particular, rises past saying anything, any more than the wind in the trees, waves breaking, or Homer's gibbering thespesiae iake. Those last chance vestiges above the threshold, the all but dispossessed of breath. Well, from that scene in New England, a leap to the coast of Florida. I'm going to read a poem called Discovery, which is, the title is taken from the name of the space shuttle, which took off in January 1992, and I happened to be down there, and so some of us went out to have a look at it taking off as opposed to seeing it take off on television, and there is a difference. It happened that around that time I also made my acquaintance for the first time with the mammal known as the manatee. Sometimes I'll call it a sea cow or dugong. Not a very pretty animal, but nevertheless it gave some people the notion of a partly human sea animal, or perhaps a merman or a mermaid. Both these phenomena are behind this poem called Discovery. The week the latest rocket went up, a pod, if that's the word, of manatees come up river to Blue Spring, where it's always warm, could be seen lolling, jacketed, elephantine, on the weedy borderline between drowsing and waking, breathing and drowning. As they came up for air, one by one, they seemed numb, torpid, quite incurious. No imagining these Cyrenians dangerously singing. So much for the Little Mermaid. True, the long-lashed little ones might have been trademarked cute by the likes of Walt Disney. His world's over that way, suitably for a peninsula where the cozy mythologies we've swindled ourselves with on taking things easy might even come true. Sun-kissed nakedness on the beach, year-round, guilt-free hibiscus and oranges, fountains welling up through the limestone, the rumor of Ponce de Leon having found the one he was looking for, living at ease in, some say, Boca Raton, others Cadiz. A last bedtime placebo. Still, we keep looking up. That clear morning, just warm enough for a lift-off, the fabulous itself could be seen unwieldily, jacket by jacket, in the act of shedding, as a snake does its husk, or a celebrant his vestments. The fiery, the arrowy tip of it, of the actual going invisible, trailing its vaporous ribboning frond as from a kelp bed, the umbilical roar of it stumbling behind, while up in the belly of it, out of their element, jacketed, lolling and treading, the discoverers, sore, clumsy in spacesuits. What are we anyhow, we warmth-hungry, breast-seeking animals? At Blue Spring, a day or so later, one of the manatees, edging toward discovery, nudged a canoe, and from across the wet, warm, dimly imaginable tightrope, let itself be touched. Now another leap in space to Italy, to a very steep and rocky place where I spent some happy time a couple of years ago. The title of the poem is The Horned Rampion. It's the name of a flower, and you'll get a picture of it, I hope, from what is to follow. Daily, out of that unfamiliar, entrancingly perpendicular terrain, some new and on minute inspection marvelous thing would be opening. Yet another savory, flowery permutation of Selene or Salvia, of scabious, of rock rose, of evening primrose, of bellflower, such as the one I'd never before laid eyes on the like of. Spurred, spirally airy, a sort of stem-born baldachin, a lone, poised, hovering rarity, hued midway between the clear azure of the rosemary and the aquilegia's somberer purple, that turned out to be named the Horned Rampion. Next day, it was no longer singular, but several. The day after, many. Within a week, it was everywhere, had become the mere Horned Rampion, had grown so familiar, I forgot it. Had not thought of it since, it seems, until the moment a volume of the Encyclopedia Britannica, pulled down for some purpose, fell open at random, and there was the Horned Rampion, named and depicted, astonishing in memory as old love reopened, still quivering. Thank you. I was pleased to hear Deborah reading of a hedgehog. Hedgehogs are not the same as porcupines. They're smaller and sweeter, although very prickly, as you gather. I'm about to read a poem in which both the porcupine and the hedgehog figure. It's about two separate landscapes. It really was written, again, on the coast of Maine. And it's called Birdham for the place that I was reminded of because it was so different. Birdham is a little town in the south of England. Hemmed by loud seas, by fractured granite, by island treescapes, each spined like a hedgehog, as well as wild roses, formidable compasses, on beholding an up late in daylight porcupine, its thicketed, shambling perpendicular, a stupor of armament, I thought of Birdham, all meek horizontals, blurred margins, sea meeting land among lanes and hedgerows, of mild, tall, approachable roses and delphiniums. A robin scavenging the tablecloth at tea time, of exclaiming one evening, "Barbara, there's a hedgehog out in the garden." "Oh," my friend complacently said then, "that's Henry." Far off, long-settled Birdham is like that. People like having hedgehogs in their gardens because they eat slugs. They're regarded as friendly creatures, even if they are prickly. Another poem from the coast of Maine, this is called At Easterly, and it is a kind of tribute to the man who built the house in which I've spent many happy pieces of summers. His name is Grattan Condon. You'll see when I get to it why I'm so fond of his memory. At Easterly. Fog all day, skim milk to gruel and back without a stirring, a single needle leaf's displacement. Pine trees, idiosyncrasy of layering and stance, seen from out there, no freak, but rather as though graven and ordained to be so. Expressive of, it comes to seem, some patience, comprehending instabilities of wind and tidefall, underwriting the running through the fingers expenditure of moonlight on water, lending ballast against vertigo as tent poles, spruce bowls, queasily at day's end begin to weave and sway, containing the far-out reef slam of a turmoil whose rumor stirs in these joists and rafters, tremors boding of no more than the least pointless tiptoe, expanding to just such a downpour as Grattan Condon, who's dead now, but whose intent goes on without him, put the roof up that we're under to listen for. Now I'm going to switch books to another poem about the coast of Maine. It goes back a little farther. This is called A Hermit Thrush, and I have to say, I think, that although I don't usually say I have favorite poems, when people ask me, I say I don't have a favorite. This is one of my favorite poems. It's a love poem. I suppose that's part of the reason. It's about a particular spot, or part of it is about a particular spot that I'm very fond of on that particular place in Maine, a bar island which can only be reached when the tide is low. If you stay too long, you're going to get your feet wet coming back. If you stay too long, you won't get back at all. There are other things, but I think that's the main thing you need to know about this one more bird poem. A Hermit Thrush. Nothing's certain. Crossing on this longest day, the low tide uncovered isthmus, scrambling up the scree slope of what at high tide will be again an island, to where a decade since well-being staked the slender, unpremeditated claim that brings us back year after year, lugging the makings of another picnic. The cucumber sandwiches, the sea air sanctified fig Newtons. There is no knowing what the slamming seas, the gales of yet another winter may have done. Still there? The gust-beleaguered single spruce tree, the ant-thronged, root-snelled moss, grass, and clover tuffet underneath it, edges frazzled raw, but like our own prolonged attachment, holding. Whatever moral lesson might commend itself, there's no use drawing one. There's nothing here to seize on as exemplifying any so-called virtue, holding on despite adversity, perhaps, or any no more than human tendency, stubborn adherence, say, to a wholly wrong-headed tenet. Though to hold on in any case means taking less and less for granted, some few things seem nearly certain, as that the longest day will come again, will seem to hold its breath, the months-long exhalation of diminishment again begin. Last night you woke me for a look at Jupiter, that vast cinder wheeled unblinking in a bath of galaxies. Watching, we traveled toward an apprehension all but impossible to be held onto, that no point is fixed, that there is no foothold, but roams untethered save by such snells, such sailors' knots, such stays and guy wires as are mainly of our own devising. From such an empyrean, aloof seraphic mentors urge us to look down on all attachment, on any bonding, as in the end untenable. Base as it is, from year to year, the earth's sore surface mends and rebinds itself, however and as best it can, with thread of cinquefoil, tendril of the magenta beach pea, trammel of bramble, with easings, mulchings, fragrances, the gray-green bayberry's cool poultice. And what can't finally be mended, the salt air proceeds to buff and rarefy. The lopped carnage of the seaward spruce clump weathers lustrous to wood silver. Little is certain, other than the tide that circumscribes us, that still sets its term to every picnic. Today we stayed too long again and got our feet wet, and all attachment may prove at best perhaps a broken, a much mended thing. Watching the longest day take cover under a monk's cowl overcast, with thunder, rain, and wind, then waiting, we drop everything to listen as a hermit thrush distills its fragmentary, hesitant, in the end unbroken music. From what source? Beyond us or the wells within, such links perceived arrive, diminished sequences so uninsistingly not even human. There's hardly a vocabulary left to wonder, uncertain as we are of so much in this existence, this botched, cumbersome, much mended, not unsatisfactory thing. Oh, thank you. More birds. I do seem to write about birds a lot. These are sort of a little different from my own experience. Magpies and bowerbirds. Magpies are traditionally are legendary for having an eye for bright objects and stealing them. The bowerbird is less well known, perhaps, because it's from down under. I'm going to read you a little passage from the Clampitt Encyclopedia about the bowerbird, common name for any of several species of birds native to Australia and New Guinea, which build for courtship display a bower of sticks or grasses. Colored stones, shells, feathers, flowers, and other bright objects are used. The satin bowerbird, Tillerinchus violaceus, prefers blue decorative articles. It's getting very fussy. Well, I really started out to write a poem about the Sienese paintings of the 15th century, of which there was a wonderful exhibition at the Metropolitan Museum a few years back. They're notable for the amount of gold and ultramarine, the rarest of pigments. And somehow, anyway, these two birds and the thought of ultramarine, which one thinks of ultramarine as meaning deep blue, ultra blue. Actually, it means from beyond the sea. That's what the name, where the name of a particular blue pigment that was used in Sienese painting came from. Anyway, ultramarine, brought from beyond. The title of the poem I'm about to read is Brought from Beyond. It's got all kinds of things in it, including a reference to the underworld once again. The magpie and the bowerbird. Its odd predilection unheard of by Marco Polo when he came upon high on Badakhshan that blue stone's embedded glint of pyrites, like the dance of light on water, or of angels, the surface tension of the absolute on nothing. Turned by processes already ancient into pigment, ultramarine, brought from beyond the water it's the seeming color of, and of the berries, blooms, and pebbles, finickingly garnishing an avian shrine or bower with the rarest hue in nature, whatever nature is. The magpie's eye for glitter from the clenched fist of the Mesozoic folding, the creek sands, the mine shaft, the siftings and burnishings, the ingot, the pagan artifact, to propagate the faith, to find the metal, unearth it, hoard it up, to, by the gilding of basilicas, transmuted. O magpie, O bowerbird, O Marco Polo and Coronado, Where do these things, these fabrications come from? The holy places, ark and altarpiece, the aureole, the seraphim, and underneath it all, the howling. I'm going to conclude with a somewhat longer poem. It's called "Sed de correr." That's a Spanish phrase meaning something like a hunger for running, for fleeing. It comes from a poem of Cesar Vallejo, a Peruvian poet who spent his last years in Paris and who has come to seem to me as a kind of emblem of a condition of this century, displacement. I used to think of myself as a poet of place, but in recent years, and particularly as I was writing this poem, I began to think, no, I'm really a poet of displacement. Anyhow, that's what this poem is sort of about. It's got a bird in it, or some birds, but it's really the birds just happen to be something that moves around, and so displacement is natural to them. Sed de correr. Caught on the move, no knowing what year it was, to the leaves of the ash tree outside the schoolroom, the stumbling drone, the ineradicable blush, the botch of being young. Oh, how can I breathe? The eyes are all mouths, they are drinking me. That glimpse, a small bird, some part of it among streakings and shadings, the fluttering fan of it, a fire. A Blackburnian warbler, I ask myself now, a redstart? Uncaught by the impeding rigors of the vascular, the cambium's moist secrets locked between xylem and phloem, the great growing trunk of it hardening, the mass, the circumference, the unhurried, implacably already there, that's to be escaped from. Escape, the urge to disjoin, the hunger to have gone, to be going, sed de correr. Vallejo in Paris, writing Me alejo todo, of fleeing, of running away from what made one, from everything. Lorca, a stranger to Morningside Heights, looking out from that ridge above Harlem, the mire and fireflies, the lit grid's apertures past counting, the bleared eye holes of jails, the tiered rictus at Creedmoor and Brentwood, where the mad are warehoused, who do not look out, who burrow, denying the need for, the nature and function, the very existence of windows, holed up torpid, hibernal, one day possibly, or possibly never, fluttering, desiccated, frail, to emerge from that hebetude. The runaway halt, no opening other than the starry apertures of paper-white narcissus forced in a bowl, cool, onion-rooted, a sweetness I drank at as though entity might depend from it, exploring chlorinated caves of sensation, wet hair, wool steam, the pipes knocking, away from the blare out there of certitude, the glare of injunction, meaning dwindling to a risen chain of bubbles in the saucepan on the hot plate, the hurrying fin far out, the lighthouse, its pulsing aperture engulfed, the waves breaking. Virginia Woolf, having written her note of farewell, going down to the river, the largest stone she could manage shoved into her pocket, the body of Lorca, crumpling, shot down at the edge of a pit on the outskirts of Granada. Vallejo in Paris, in extremis, crying out on Good Friday, AD 1938, I'm going to Spain! Pulled up, cut off from his own roots' torment, the certitudes, the incursions, the plunder, having written of the condition of cities, of being alone among people, the windows looked out of, the mute telephone, the dementia. Kafka, devising a passage up through the windowless warren of calculation, contingency, foresight, there's no way out of, metamorphosing escape in the form, oh no, not of a bird, not he who so fled the open, but of an insect, gravitating unerringly toward the dark. Those feelers, that lustrous chitinous lodging among interstices, among systems we've lost track of the workings of, and to whose advantage, outwitting the gathering impasse of language, the screech of its decibels, the mumble of its circumlocutions, the mutter all over Europe of what sooner and sooner was about to happen. Refugees were arriving, cut off, adrift, at large in the fathomless afternoon of arrival, alone. Suppose that to be seen by no one would be, in fact, to vanish. I looked out from a window ledge on Morningside Heights, that ridge overlooking the eyesore of real estate that is Harlem, too scared to begin to grapple with, to think in the inexorable terms of the leverages of excuse that maintained it. Impervious to the ideologues, whereases, and necessarities, the thunderous because, the sad, lingering cadenza notwithstanding. I was not deaf to the screech of what had somehow knowably, been closing in, closing down ever since I'd begun to remember. Refugees. It was with a refugee I'd ventured just once into Harlem. Jan Muller, who'd later vividly paint his way through an insomniac excess while he died of it like Kafka. Refugees from the songless, amputated tree Lorca wrote of, leaves fallen, adrift, the great trunk lost sight of, the stasis of such scattering, such dispersals. Adrift among hallways, stairwells, air shafts, the asphalt of rooftops, among old law walk-ups, the rusting entablatures, fire escapes, catfoot walkways, upended avenues of thievery, of escape that is no escape, trailing the shuddering jointed lurch alongside the platform, elevated or submerged, the serial unseeing faces within, the windows traveling, a delirium of them, of arrivals, escapes that are no escape, cheap plane tickets from Puerto Rico to what? Rooftop rainwater weeping in, the aerials, the hutches put up by breeders of pigeons, the wild rock doves' cosmopolitan offspring, their homing swerve more nearly adapted than these refugees from the cane fields, corridored, murderous green. Caught up in the wing-borne roar, the breaking wave of displacement. So many injunctions in need of translation, translated here to the crass miracle of whatever it is that put up the South Bronx, street number after street number, the mailbox pried open, recipient unknown, moved on, shot down, and has made of it this byword, this burnt-out, roofless, windowless testimonial to systems gone rotten, this arson. There is much, too much to be done. So Vallejo, a wistful sometime disciple of Lenin, declared, but who heard him? Not I. Shades drawn against being seen, against systems from Bohemia's sempiternal cocoon, the hallways smelling of cat piss and mildew. Who will hear? Rilke wondered, imagining the rush from out there, the vast presences, harsh with transcendence, whose nature is to ignore one. Not those great wings. I was too much afraid. By a window onto an air shaft one night, I stood awed at the sight of two men making love. I'd not known how it was done. Through thin walls, year after year, I could not stop up my ears to the spats, the crudities, the climaxes faked or unfake, to once the squalled outcry while others came to the rescue. What my ears awaited, out past the suicidal refuge of a fire escape on West 12th Street, was the all but inaudible, the lisp in a back garden catalpa, the fluttering fan of a warbler on the move, spring or fall, that glimpsed inkling of things beyond systems, wind-borne, oblivious. C'est de colère. Above Tijuana, where the language, its streams and islets begin to change color, the moiling crawl along the freeway, La Cucaracha, the refuge of Gregor Samsa writ large, written everywhere. A teenage entrepreneur selling roses, bull's blood red velvet of a piece with all the matador kitsch across the border, threading the labyrinth of the need to flee, to be at once on the go and in hiding. That's what we've become. The moving vehicle, the estrangement. On West 12th Street, the tree is dying. The rough, green-napped, huge heart shapes, the cigar shapes, the striations at the throat of the ruffled corolla, year by year are expiring by inches. The axe is laid at the root of the ash tree. The leaves, the dispersal, the runaway pages surround us. Who will hear? Who will gather them in? Who will read them? Thank you.
Thanks for listening. 92nd Street Y, Unterberg Poetry Center webcasts, and access to our archive are made possible by the generous support of listeners like you. For more information on 92nd Street Y and all our programs, please visit us on the web at 92y.org. This program is copyright 1994 by 92nd Street Y.